Rebecca Young, Associate Principal Viola in the New York Philharmonic. And this is What's in My Case. Ready to go? I play a very large instrument. It's 17.5 inches plus a fraction. Most violas are under 17, well under 17. 16.5, 15.5, that's really small for me. The case that I acquired the instrument in was falling apart and I needed a new one, but no one made a case that would fit my viola. So I ordered a case from a guy in London. I went there, he made meticulous measurements of the case, and a few months later, I got this in the mail, and I was heading down to the garage after rehearsal one day with the case on my back. And I made a misstep in the garage and I tumbled head over tail, over feet in the garage down 11 concrete steps. I landed on my back on the viola with my feet up in the air. And the first thing I worried about, of course, was the instrument because I was on top of it. And I pulled it out from underneath me and I opened it up and I took out the viola and it was in tune. So it's worth its weight in gold. Howard Weissman, everybody. So the instrument I use at the Philharmonic is a Maggini. It was made in 1619. I should look so good when I'm 400 years old. And it has beautiful markings on it. Maggini's early violas were big like this, even bigger actually, and perhaps played like a viol, like a cello between the legs. And then eventually he started cutting them down to what we consider more standard size. This is still above standard. It started out even bigger, but I'm going to show you some markings on this thing. This is called purfling, double purfling. He has double. There are two lines that are sort of engraved in there. And if you look closely, you can see that it was cut down and that one of those lines is actually drawn in. And look at the markings on the back. Isn't that beautiful? I think you're beautiful. Of course, you can't play viola without a bow. I have two of them. It is good to have a spare. You never know when something's going to happen. I have seen people have problems when we're on tour, that something happens to the hair or something breaks. So it's good to have a spare. My two bows are both modern makers, from modern makers. One is Matthew Whaling, and the other one is by a maker named Le Canu. And I probably use Le Canu a little bit more in the orchestra, but I use them both. I love them both. In terms of strings, which strings do I use? I use, for the most part, Ava Perazzi Gold on all four strings. Sometimes I'll use a Yargarth, the old standby, use for my A. And I've taken to using fortes on there, but sometimes medium, but for the most part, I think I stick to the regular, the whole set of Perazzi Golds. So a couple of random things that I have in here in my case. I found this chin rest tightener, and that is just a tool we use if the chin rest for some reason becomes loose or needs to be taken off. You stick it in here and you rotate these. That's what that is. It's also good for picking your teeth. That was a joke, by the way. This is peg soap or peg goop, and it's most useful in the summertime when the wood starts to expand and the pegs start to stick because of the humidity. And you undo the pegs a little bit and you put the stuff in here. It's like a brown, ugly brown lipstick. Speaking of, I've got chapstick. I've got change for the vending machine. And definitely we want to have rags to wipe down your strings when you're done playing. If you're in an orchestra where there are trombones, or if there's a piccolo, you're going to have a ton of these. So when you're done playing with earplugs, what do? You can't throw them on the floor. There's no time. A lot of times you have to quickly grab your bow and take them out and start playing again. So where do we put them when we're done with them? In our ear? Right in between our strings, right here. It's embarrassing, but it's convenient. Now, how many times have you been on a gig when the lighting is horrible? So sometimes I just bring my own. So a couple more absolutely vital things that I carry around in my case are my glasses, which I no longer can go without. And every musician, professional or otherwise, needs to have a good pencil with them. Now this one is my favorite. It's from Japan. It's called Mitsubishi. I'm not kidding you. And this is a great eraser too. Every time the orchestra goes to Japan, we all go running to the same stationery store and buy up as many of our favorite pencils. Everybody has a different favorite, but this one's mine. I never go anywhere without them. Bendy straws, because you never know when you might need this life skill. Take your bendy straw, put it in your armpit, sticking out just a tiny bit in the back, and blow. Come on, folks, you never know. There is one more thing I don't go anywhere without. Makes the case kind of heavy. I've learned a whole lot from my stand partner, Cynthia Phelps. I would tell her, I'm having a really hard time getting a clean sound out of this and I don't know what's going on. And she said, have you changed your strings recently? And you want to know a secret? I didn't know until Cindy that you have to change your strings on occasion. It's one thing to listen for when things start sounding not so good, and I don't mean out of tune, and I don't mean things that you can change technically yourself. Another thing I learned from her is, when's the last time you've had an adjustment? In a viola or any string instrument, between the belly and the back is a little dowel, and I don't think I can get you to see it, but you take it to a luthier and they tap, tap, tap just a tiny fraction, and if they move it in just the right place, all of a sudden your notes aren't going anymore. All of a sudden you can get a beautiful sound. Rehair your bow. I didn't know that either. I thought when the bow was losing its hair, that's when I was a kid, I thought that. So a couple of practice tips. One, do your scales. When I was a kid, if you had told me then that I'd still be playing scales now, I would have said, no, scales are for kids and students, and music is for grown-ups and professionals. I do scales every day. I do them every time I'm warming up. And that's because you don't have to concentrate on the music at that point. You just can think about intonation, meaning playing in tune. That is probably the most important thing for anybody. So intonation, you want to fix that, right? So intonation, another thing you think about when you're playing scales is your bow speed. Very even. So you might want to divide it into 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Or 1, 2, 3, 4. Or 1, 2, 3. So the bow has to move very evenly and consistently. Otherwise, you get these bulges in your playing. Watch if it's not. This is even. A lot of people tend to speed their bow up towards the end, and you'll hear a little kick. So that's another thing to work on also with scales is bow changes, clean bow changes without, you don't hear that kick, you don't hear the dirt. Scales are perfect for that. I'm Rebecca Young of the New York Philharmonic, and this has been What's in My Case. Thanks for joining me. I'd like to introduce you to my youngest child, Benny. Okay, watch. Catch it? Okay.